Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so there's this fascinating historical fable that completely demystifies how wealth is truly built. It starts with a simple, ancient game, but it ends up revealing the exact mathematical engine driving the world's most successful modern investments. If you've ever wondered how tiny, consistent actions can lead to, well, absolutely unimaginably huge results, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down the mechanics of this phenomenon and see exactly why our human brains are actually hardwired to completely misunderstand it at first glance. Let's dive in.
So we start our story with a powerful king. He wanted to offer a grand reward to this wonderfully wise inventor who had created something entirely new for the realm. Now the king naturally expected a demand for gold or jewels or maybe some massive estate, but when he asked what the inventor wanted as a prize, the inventor asked for something that sounded, frankly, ridiculously small. His exact request? Just 1 grain of rice.
Yeah, you heard that right. To understand how this tiny, seemingly insignificant request eventually shocked an entire kingdom to its core, we need to look at the specific parameters this inventor laid out. Because obviously, he didn't just want a single, solitary grain of rice in total. He was an inventor, right? He had a very specific, carefully calculated mathematical system in mind. It was a brilliant proposition that had immense, sprawling complexity right behind a super humble ask.
He presented a standard, simple chessboard to the king, and then he gave the king the supposedly harmless 2-step mathematical procedure. Step 1, place 1 single grain of rice on the very first square of the board. Step 2, simply double that amount on every square after that. So 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on until every single square was filled. Easy, right?
Hearing these terms, the king literally laughed out loud. I mean, he felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Looking at the empty wooden board, he thought this was just an absolute fool's bargain. "That's all you want?" he asked, completely underestimating the mathematics at play. He agreed to the terms right then and there, totally convinced he was pulling a fast one and saving his treasury an absolute fortune.
Well, the king's laughter didn't last very long. Once the royal servants actually began executing his orders and physically counting out the rice, the cold, hard reality of the math started to set in. What started as a joke in the throne room quickly morphed into a logistical nightmare that quite literally threatened to break the kingdom's entire treasury. You see, this kind of progression behaves in a way that our linear-thinking human minds simply do not anticipate.
At first, the quantities on those initial squares really did seem entirely insignificant. 1 grain, then 2, then 4, 8, 16. You could fit this all comfortably right in the palm of your hand. The king was probably still chuckling to himself at this point, watching his servants painstakingly count out these tiny microscopic handfuls of grain onto the board.
But then, as the squares increased, moving further and further across the rows of the chessboard, the pacing of the growth accelerated exponentially. It started turning invisible, tiny amounts into a literal avalanche of grain. Hundreds quickly became thousands, and within just a few more squares, those thousands absolutely exploded into millions. The laughter in the room definitely stopped when literal carts of rice had to be hauled in just to fill a single square.
And those millions, they quickly became billions. The pile just kept doubling and doubling and doubling. By the time they reached the final square of that 64-square chessboard, the total amount of rice required was just staggering. We're talking mountains of rice that would completely dwarf entire cities. It exceeded everything that existed in the entire kingdom, and frankly, the known world. The king was utterly bankrupted, all by a handful of rice.
Now, this story of the king, the inventor, and the chessboard isn't just a clever little historical trick to bend your mind. It's actually a perfect, real-world illustration of the secret of compounding. It precisely maps out how exponential growth fundamentally alters whatever system it is applied to, and understanding this exact mechanic is absolutely the bedrock of modern wealth creation.
The exact same invisible explosion happens with modern investments. The power of compounding works exactly like that chessboard. Growth starts out so slowly it feels almost invisible at first, just like those 1, 2, and 4 grains of rice. You might not even notice the daily or monthly changes. But then, as it builds on itself over and over, compounding the previous growth, it suddenly becomes undeniably, massively huge.
Okay, so to ground this math in a practical, everyday scenario that we can all actually relate to, let's step away from kings and ancient inventors for a second. Let's meet 2 completely different modern-day investors who are just trying to build their financial futures. We'll call them Sarah and Zane. Their story perfectly mirrors the chessboard, just, with dollars instead of grains of rice.
So, Meet Sarah. She decides she's going to start investing $200 every single month, and she begins this highly disciplined habit early, at age 22. Then we have her friend Zane. Zane also invests that exact same amount, $200 a month. But Zane waits. He delays his entry into the market and starts making his monthly investment much later, at age 35.
Now here is the absolutely critical piece of the puzzle to keep in mind for our comparison. Both of them are earning the exact same investment return over the course of their lives. They're participating in the exact same market, getting the exact same percentage yield year over year. The whole shebang is totally equal except for when they decided to start. Yet, because of the math we just learned, their end results are shockingly different.
Check out this massive visual whiplash at retirement. By the time they both reach retirement age, Sarah has nearly double the wealth of Zane. Just let that sink in for a second. Double the financial security, double the wealth, simply because she acted earlier. Zane could save fiercely in his later years, but he can practically never catch up to the sheer mathematical momentum that Sarah built.
So the crucial point here is that Sarah didn't win this race by investing larger, heavier sums of money every month. Remember, they both put in exactly $200. She won because she gave compound interest more time to work its magic. She essentially gave herself more squares on her financial chessboard for that doubling effect to take place.
And that is the ultimate takeaway from this explainer for your own financial timeline. In the world of wealth building, time is your absolute superpower. It's the single most important variable in the entire compounding equation. You can have the best stock picks or even the highest income, but without the long runway of time, you are severely capping your potential.
While most people obsess over how much capital they are putting in, stressing out that they don't have thousands of dollars to just drop into the market right now, successful investors have a totally different mindset. They focus entirely on how early they can begin, even if it's just a really small, seemingly insignificant amount. They know that getting on the board is way more important than how much you bring to the very first square.
The overarching lesson from the chessboard is simple. Never, ever underestimate small beginnings. A single grain of rice literally became a mountain that bankrupted a kingdom. In the exact same way, a small, consistent investment, given enough time to breathe and multiply, can become an absolute fortune that secures your family's future for generations.
True wealth isn't built overnight. It's not some get-rich-quick scheme. It's built through the disciplined patience of letting time do the heavy lifting for you. The secret is patience, and patience is truly where wealth begins. You really just have to be willing to sit back, weather the storms, and let that mathematical doubling happen quietly in the background.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final provocative question. Ask yourself, what will your first grain of rice be? How can you start compounding your own future today, right now, with whatever small amount you have? Thanks so much for exploring this incredible concept with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.